Welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. Nolan Baker is not with us this week, but Chaz Price is joining us. Very pleased to have Chaz, as always. Guys, CNBC published a story about the financial challenges of a woman who recently lost her husband to COVID, and one of her quotes that stuck with me was, "We planned for life, but we didn't plan for death." Now, clearly, this isn't a subject that anyone enjoys talking about, but it is one that probably needs to happen in the retirement planning process. So when you guys have this conversation with clients, how does it typically go? Is it something that a proper estate plan can help couples prepare for?
Well, there's no question, Chris. It's, as we've said many times before on the radio show, we've got we've created the Ultimate Estate Planning Guide. It really kind of helps lay things out for those people that suffer a loss of a loved one, and it's very, very important to have that. We've had a lot of requests for that. But when I talk to clients that have lost a loved one, one of the things I do is I really just kind of sit and talk with people, right? And a lot of them echo the same sentiment. It's like, I just wasn't prepared for this. Mm-hmm. And most, you're not. And even if someone is failing and then they do go through, the end of life stages that they go through, it's still very difficult to grasp. And there are so many things out there that you're not prepared for. Chaz, what do you run into when because dealing with life insurance and annuities and the different types of insurance that people have in place to protect them? What do you run into with this?
Yeah, I would echo that same thought process, is that normally it kind of just comes down to that human aspect of trying to understand what someone's going through, putting yourself in their shoes. It really depends on the situation. I mean, for instance, if you have younger children, mm-hmm. and I have a gambit of clients from that age up to mid 80s. Some still do have younger children, and that's typically when we start the financial planning process. Where we're going to start is estate planning, because what happens if something happens to you? Where do the kids go? What happens to your income if a spouse passes away and now you only have part of your Social Security benefits? So these are some of the contingencies that we try to talk about early on in the financial planning process, because, like you said, you just never know. I mean, I'm in a golf league, and one of the members of another league passed away in the middle of his backswing. Wow. I mean, middle 50s, 60s. You just never know. So that's something that we've always been taught in pretty much any financial planning course I've ever taken, is to not put those sort of things off. The other thing I run into a lot, Scott, is where we have, and I'm sure you have too, where you have one spouse that's the finance spouse, mm-hmm. and the other spouse just kind of throws their hands up and says, "I'm here for all the health care, all the medical decisions. I don't want to know anything about finances," which is fine, provided that you've got that information documented somewhere. And part of the planning process, and one of the services that we offer, is the vault. We have on our financial planning tool that we use called Right Capital, has a secure electronic vault that you can upload all of your trusts, your POAs, your estate planning, your will, mm-hmm. to that electronic storage in the cloud, so that somebody can pull it down. We know exactly where things are at, and it doesn't make it easy, certainly, but it's just one less thing to worry about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, there's a couple of things that we go through, and I know Nolan does, and I know you do, Chaz, and I do as well, is, the first thing that we tell clients is take a pause. Mm-hmm. Step back. You don't have to settle everything right now today, and it's difficult at times because you're dealing with the trauma of losing a loved one. Mm-hmm. And I know, I mentioned before with my dad passing, I'm working on all of this stuff with my mom. We took a pause. We just stepped back and said, you know what? I need to grieve. I need to just kind of get a grasp on what just happened. Yeah. Step back and take a few days, weeks, whatever, to just grieve.
Mm-hmm. Get yourself in the right mindset.
There's no question. So, that's one thing that we always want to make sure that we go through with them. Understand your cash flow. One of the things that I did with my mom was, okay, Mom, we need to figure out what your finances are going to be like, right? We're going to figure out how much money you got coming in and how much money are we going to have going out, you know? So kind of understand the cash flow. The one thing that I've always said is the one great thing of many that my dad did was he set Mom up. We didn't even know that he did some of the things he did, which was pretty cool to find out. But he set her up with, his retirement pension, and then he had some other life insurance and some annuities that were automatically rolled over to her. So, understand, take a good look at the money coming in and how it's going to be distributed.
And the money going out, too.
No question.
In some cases, maybe expenses might go down a little bit since there's only one spouse,
Right.
with some of those things. So
Yeah.
it may not be as bad as you think. In fact, we had a client last week that her husband passed away, and she came in, and we understood that the income was going to be a little lower, but she said, I think I'm going to be okay. So, make sure you take that inventory.
And there's no better feeling to sit with someone after they've gone through and experienced that loss to let them know you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of see the shoulders shrink a little bit, and a smile comes on their face, and they understand that, hey, we're going to be okay. Take a look and take stock of your finances. Figure out exactly what you have with your investments in that, and that's where you come into play, right? You'll sit down and kind of like this client. You look at their portfolios. You do that quite often.
Yeah, absolutely. With respect to retirement accounts, particularly if it's a spouse, situation that the loved one passes away, you have a lot of flexibility. That's one of the nice things about the rules the IRS has in place for when a spouse passes away, is that if it's an IRA, the spouse has the ability to continue that deposit account on as if it were their own. So what that means to you is that you don't have to, if the person that passed away was already taking out required minimum distributions, the amount of money that you are forced to take out, you have the option. You can continue on taking those RMDs if you think you need the money, or if you're not at the required minimum distribution age yet, you can actually roll that account into your own IRA and then continue on as if it were your money originally. So they give you a lot of flexibility with that.
Sure. Well, that's a great thing. And then I would say one of the things that I actually experienced as well is it's time to take a look at your own estate plan. A lot of people, once the passing of one of the spouses, and then they just kind of assume that everything is going to be taken care of for them. In my particular situation, I just had this conversation a couple of weekends ago with Mom, and she says, I think we need to start looking at getting things taken care of for me now, so we don't have to worry about some of these things like we did when Dad passed. So make sure that your beneficiaries are updated. Make sure that your all of the account information is in a situation like the vault, knowing that if something were to happen to you, you pass things on down to your surviving, family, if you so have. And it's important to make sure that you update your own estate at that point.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with that. Especially if you have children, they're married, and let's say a spouse passes away, and you guys just forget to update the beneficiaries. You've got it going to 3 children. Maybe, unfortunately, one of the other children's predeceased you, God forbid. If you don't want that percentage going to maybe the deceased child's spouse, if you want that to stay, in your family, just make sure that you're always updating your beneficiaries, and it's a great time to start looking at that stuff.
Absolutely. Power of attorneys, healthcare power of attorney. If you've got a executor of your estate and it happened to be your spouse, well, they're gone.
Yeah.
You're going to need somebody else. You're going to need to appoint somebody else. You're going to need to make sure you take care of all those things. So those are, those are some of the 4 bullet points that we kind of hit with clients when they have to handle the unfortunate loss of a spouse. There's just a lot of things out there. You just don't plan for it. I just said to a client the other day, they were talking about life insurance. I said, life insurance is probably not the right title. It should be death insurance. Life insurance really does nothing for you while you're alive.
That's a good point.
Right, think about it. It's life insurance, right? you really figure out how valuable that life insurance is when there's a death.
Or if you've ever had to physically deliver a check to
No question.
a spouse or surviving spouse,
Yes.
then you know.
Yeah, you sure do. That's when you really find out.
You know, the loss of a loved one is obviously a very emotional time, whether it is a spouse or a parent or, as Chaz says, you know, heaven forbid, a child. And there's not really any amount of planning you can do that's going to minimize that sting. But when it comes to the financial burden that sometimes comes into play after the loss of a loved one, especially a spouse, with proper planning, that is something that can be alleviated. And so that is something America's Retirement Headquarters wants you to be aware of. Take advantage of that Ultimate Estate Planning Guide. Go online to the website, americasretirementheadquarters.com. Check it out. And then when you want to put together that all-encompassing plan, give a call, reach out, schedule a time to speak with them, 419-794-3030. Once again, 419-794-3030 or online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. Going to step aside for just a second, take a break. When we come back, next we're going to talk about taking some of the complexity out of Social Security claiming process. That conversation right after this.